Good night, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Tomoy Campbell, and I'll be your moderator for this evening. I just wanted to let you know that we're giving persons 5 more minutes to just come on in and settle themselves before we begin. So we'll begin at 7:05. Good evening, everyone. It is 7:05, so I think it is fair for us to start. So, good evening again. My name is Tamoy Campbell, and it is my pleasure to be your moderator for this evening. I do hope everyone is feeling well. I hope everyone is doing all right. I'd like to know how you guys are feeling. So, you could type in the chat maybe a smiley face, maybe a thumbs up, just to let me have a feel or an understanding of how everyone is doing tonight. And I hope you're excited as I am about this evening's presentation on personal and professional branding. But before we get into all of that, just want to have a feel of how my audience is doing. Hi, good night. This is Barbara from, hello, Rochelle. Hi, very good that Rona is doing great. I see you. Awesome, awesome. I just love the energy already. I'm so happy that everyone is doing well. Now, this evening, I was really excited, and I still am very much excited about the presentation. And I'm just really shaking in my boots because I feel that everyone will also be leaving just a little more inspired. When you hear personal and professional branding in this day and age, it's as if it's your social currency to navigate through any bit or area of life. Granted, it's not my area tonight to speak on that, but much more of our presenter, Mrs. Karen Tomlinson, to really elucidate us on how it is that we understand how to improve our personal and professional brand, keeping it fresh, current, the tips and tricks, and all the things that we definitely need to know. I'm just going to lay out a few ground rules before we jump right into it. If at any time you are probably not hearing so well, you could just indicate in the chat probably an emoji to just let me know. In addition to that, because we don't want the feedback when someone is speaking, kindly asking for all mics to be muted. And at the end of Mrs. Tomlinson's presentation, there will be a Q&A where you to open your mics and let us hear your voices and hear what you have to say. So with that being said, and I hope everyone understands the ground rules, let's get right into it. Hi, Hope from Stanford. Is that Connecticut? I hope I got it right. So this evening's presentation, I'm really happy about it because Mrs. Tomlinson, in my opinion, is the personification or the epitome of what it is to chase your dreams no matter where you are in life. She started mostly though in banking and she stayed there for 30 years.
Yes, ma'am. We're good. We're good. Thanks for asking. Yes, man.
A little feedback. They're just asking for the mics to be muted. So just for the mics to be muted, please. So Mrs. Tomlinson, in my opinion, is just the personification of what it means to chase your dreams and go after what you want, no matter where you are in life. And as I said, she started in banking and she stayed there for 30 years, which was quite surprising. Now, even though her career would have spanned such a long time in said area, she spent most of those times doing sales and sales support, including managing a large branch and providing sales support to several retail branches at Scotiabank Jamaica, while in her post as a director of retail banking. In addition to that, she was also providing sales support and training to be a sales trainer at by Scotiabank Canada. And then her eureka or her light bulb moment really hit her when she realized this is really what she wants to do. I started out banking, but my heart is going out for something else. And she decided to just be bold and unafraid and go for it. So, with that, she retired early and she decided to focus on sales training. Since then, because it was her first love. And now she is a sales performance consultant trainer since 2015. She's been helping lots of companies and training and developing and maintaining a high performance of sale and service culture in their organization, creating a win-win for the clients, the sales teams, the companies, and their shareholders. In addition to that, she's proud of her role because guess what? She's not just leaving a legacy behind because she's so instrumental in the process of helping these companies in the sales and the marketing programs. But when you look at it, even though she's generating billions for these companies, she's impacting people's lives in doing that. She has impacted the growth and development of 700 sales professionals and managers. And that is, in and of itself is an amazing feat. Mrs. Tomlinson is also a believer in continuous self development, which is why she joined the John Maxwell team late last year. Now, she's a certified John Maxwell trainer, speaker, and coach, and she continues to add value to other person's lives and businesses. As a certified member, she's able to use Dr. Maxwell's books and materials on the JMT Online University to communication, personal growth, conduct leadership, and conducting leadership roundtables. My apologies. And her experiences with the leaders to improve such leadership intelligence and their effectiveness. Now, outside of work, because everyone has a life outside of work, and Mrs. Tomlinson is no different, her altruistic nature runs wild. She has been a Kiwanian for the last 30 years, and she is also a part of the University of the West Indies Graduating Group, providing Circle K, which is a collegiate leadership program for Kiwanis International. Additionally, she's a part of the University of the West Indies Graduating Group, providing 2 bursaries to students of Mona School of Business and Management. So we're seeing just somebody leaving impact, creating legacies, helping companies generate lots and lots of income, but at the same time, her altruistic nature runs wild, and I can just think this is a whole rounded person, and we're in for a fulsome meal tonight. Now, even though she does give her varsity students, to that end, she's also sponsored students from her alma mater, Alpha Academy, and she has also mentored a bank scholar. Of all these feats and accolades, I think her proudest moment and her most important role at that is being the mother of her 29-year-old son. And everyone, I thank you so much for coming in. I thank you for being on time. But I'm going to take myself out of the way and turn over to our presenter, Mrs. Karen Tomlinson. Just asking you all to welcome her by typing a star in the chat. Welcome her to our virtual stage. Mrs. Tomlinson, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much, Tamoy. It's very strange sometimes to listen to yourself being introduced and hear all of these things. You wonder if it's somebody else who did all of those things that you were talking about. So it makes me feel a little bit old, but at least I will call it experience, right? Instead of saying old. So thank you again for that introduction. And I'm glad to see on the chat where a lot of persons are saying that they're doing great, because I was going to ask, I hope everybody's doing wonderful during this time and keeping the spirits up. So I'm glad for the opportunity to be here and to share what I've learned over those years about branding. So I'd first like to say that a lot of what I've learned was by what Dr. John C. Maxwell calls failing forward. Because, sometimes you learn from your mistakes over the years. So, you can speak from the experience. It's never too late to start looking at how you're branding yourself, especially now more than ever, because there's a strong need for companies and individuals to build professional as well as personal brands, because we're living in a time of unpredictability. Nobody could have predicted what is happening in 2020. And there's a lot of noise and competition to cut through online. So we really need to make sure that we are truly branding ourselves. So this evening, I'm going to be looking at both, it's not moving. Okay, great. All right, so we're going to be looking at both personal and professional branding. In particular, we'll look at what branding is about, what are the definitions of branding. We'll also more specifically focus on personal branding and why it is important and how it will help you. We'll also talk about how to discover and develop your unique personal brand, as well as how to communicate and maintain it. And finally, we'll look very quickly at what employers are looking for as it relates to your personal brand, because I know a lot of you are young students. So let us first, as I said, look at how branding is defined. So the first definition, simply put, says a brand is a collection of perceptions in the mind of a consumer, including awareness, perception, reputation, and trust. Another definition says brands are born of experience and reflect trust, and is a measure of reputation and perceptions in the eyes of the consumer. You'll notice how frequently they speak to perception. So to sum it all up, Steve McNamara says a brand is the sum of all the feelings, thoughts, and recognitions, both positive and negative, that people in your target audience associate with the company, product, or service. Now, there are 5 elements that can make a company brand great. And I'm sure you'll agree with a number of these, because the brand value proposition extends beyond its product. The great brands aren't just differentiated, they also make a difference. Sometimes you'll see brands that have a conscience. They were like brands that will give back to their consumers. Great brands involve their audience. So when you involve your audience, it is more engaging. And I'm sure you'll also can think of some brands that engage our emotions. So for example, I've always loved the Budweiser ads that come when you have the Super Bowl, because they touch on your emotions. There's one with a dog, a lost dog with a horse, a relationship between the two animals. So sometimes you'll remember these brands because they engage your emotions and they deliver more profound messages and ensure connections. And of course, some brands help people to help themselves, help people to achieve their goals. So professional branding is about creating and selling an experience and being able to offer quality and unique insights with a sense of authority. So when a company can consciously and intentionally influence public perception and consumers, they automatically elevate their credibility. And I'm sure you'd agree with that. So whether it's through evoking the emotions that I spoke about, being engaging with the public, with their audience, or helping them to achieve their goals, especially the financial institution that I've worked with in terms of helping clients or customers to achieve their financial goals. So I'm sure you can think of a number of brands that have done, if not one or more of these elements to make their company brand great. And I'm just sharing a couple of them with you. Tomo, I mentioned that I worked at Scotiabank before. And I remember when I first joined Scotia, their slogan was, "You're safe with us." So over the years, they had this reputation about safety. With BMW, what do we think about? Luxury vehicles, expensive vehicles, right? Jamaicans love KFC, finger licking good, tasty fast food, right? And of course, you have Apple. Everybody's into the technology, so you think about efficient, high technology. And if you think about it, you'll realize it is your perception of these companies that is their brand, and that these perceptions are verbs. So like I mentioned, Scotia, safety, you think of safety. BMW, you think of luxury or luxurious. KFC, tasty. And of course, with the Apple, very efficient, high tech. So just as how this works that way with the companies, it's the same way for individuals in terms of their personal brand. So none of these organizations treat their brand as an afterthought. Rather, their identities are their key differentiators. And as Jeff Bezos says, a brand for a company is like reputation for a person. You earn reputation by trying to do hard things well. And more solid brands mean stronger identities, both for the products and the people using them. Shivan also states we choose one another, or one over the other rather, based on our perception of its reputation. Again, it's about perception, reputation in the marketplace of the company brand or an individual. Similarly, as it is for these professional brands, our personal brand is how persons perceive us. And to sum it up, a brand is not just a logo, it's the overall impression and experience you give to your audience and your customers. Your brand expresses the value you provide, it's you. But these are consumer brands. So let us talk a little bit about personal branding and why it is important. In the same way as I said, that how we perceive consumer brands, that's what makes their brand, is the same thing that applies to individuals. But let us look at what a definition of what personal brand is. Our first definition is the process by which you market yourself to others. In other words, the way you communicate what you do. Another definition says it's a process by which you differentiate yourself by identifying and articulating your unique value proposition and what you bring to the table, and then leveraging it across platforms with a consistent message and image to achieve specific goals. It is how people perceive you. And it is also about getting your potential clients, employers, etc., to choose you as the only solution to your problem or to their problem. So personal branding, I love the second definition because it's how you differentiate yourself in the marketplace. People need to get to know you. What is your unique value proposition and what do you bring to the table? So we're going to talk a lot more about that during the course of this evening. Personal brands, therefore, allow individuals to differentiate themselves by consistently articulating and leveraging their unique value proposition, as I mentioned. So we as individuals are our brand, right? So what we do defines us. If we're not branding ourselves, guys, this is very important. You can be assured that others are doing it for you because everyone has a personal brand, whether we know it or not. The question is whether we are managing it. So when we talk about personal branding, we're talking because we all have a brand, but the key thing is how do we manage it and how do we ensure that what we want to portray to the world or the audience that we want to portray to, that how they see us is how we want them to see us. So that's very, very important. We're going to talk about that today. So personal branding is for everybody. Whether you're a job seeker or an entrepreneur or a company leader, we all want to be regarded as experts. So what is different is going to be the audience. So if you're a job seeker, the persons that you would be trying to attract or who your audience would be would of course be potential employers or persons who can put you onto those potential employers. If you're an entrepreneur, your audience will be your marketplace or your clients. And if you're a company leader, your audience would be within your organization or within your company industry, that sort of a thing. So it's very important that we know who our audience is as well. And this statement is very, very, explains it in one nutshell. What you do, who you do it for, how you make yourself unique, and where you do it equals you, the brand. So this evening, we're going to talk about what you do, who you do it for, how you make yourself unique, and where you do it, because that is you, the brand. So I'm sure we all recognize these faces, just like the company brands that I showed you before. And based upon what we had discussed so far, I'm sure you have some thoughts about these individuals. And do you think that they have a personal brand, right? I'm sure you would agree with me that they all do. So remember, it's our perception of these persons, that is their brand, and perceptions are verbs. So when you look at Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Steve Jobs, Usain Bolt, Muhammad Ali, or the King Beanie Man, what do you think about? How would you describe them in a verb? What is your perception of them? One thing I'm sure you'd agree with is that they all have a personal brand and you do perceive them in one way or the other. So for example, everybody perceives Usain Bolt as the fastest man alive in terms of running, right? He's known around the world as the fastest man alive. Muhammad Ali, I don't know if for your generation, if everybody knows who Muhammad Ali is, but he had this slogan, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. He was known as in terms of a boxer, the best boxer when he was alive. King Beanie Man, right? Everybody knows Beanie Man associating him with dancing. Barack Obama, best president, I'm sure some persons would say. Oprah Winfrey, everybody knows who she is in terms of what she does in terms of her talk show and her generosity and so on. And of course, Steve Jobs is associated with technology. So let us look at how we build our own personal brand. Haven't seen how these persons have built their personal brand over the years. How do we deliver our personal brand? So there are a variety of benefits that will come from you putting in the time and the effort to build a personal brand. You'll be more visible online, which is where your audiences are spending the majority of their time. It is in our best interest or your best interest to become more accessible and to engage with your online audiences, because delivering your personal brand will help you in your job search if you're looking for a job. A lot of persons think, however, this is the only reason for delivering a personal brand, but I'm here to say that it's not the only reason, because I remember also when I was in a job for a very long time, I did not think that I needed to focus on building up a personal brand. But building a brand, even if you're already in a job, will also help you in your current job, because it helps you to find new opportunities, build rapport, maybe with potential clients or customers, networking, making connections with people generally. And generally speaking, when you make connections, you become more personally fulfilled in life because you're making connections with people. And you remember I spoke, as I said to you earlier on, about failing forward, because as I mentioned a while ago, because I was in a job for so many years, I did not focus on my personal branding. And then when I left and I went to another institution, that company was sold within a few years of my going there. So of course I lost my job. And then I had to focus on branding myself at that point, because no matter how good you are in what you do, if people don't know that you're good at what you do, then it doesn't make sense. You won't be able to get another job. So you really have to think about delivering your personal brand, whether or not you're searching for a job or not. That's not the only reason. It will pay for you to make sure that you're continuously focusing on delivering your personal brand. So the more visible you are, the greater the spotlight will shine on you and your brand. So you're going to then be able to stand apart from the crowd when you can build a reliable personal brand. And remember too, it's important to know that building a brand is not about self-promotion. Yes, you need to talk about your strengths, etc. But one of the main differences between just self-promotion and delivering a personal brand is because the brand also includes talking about how do you add value to people? How do you help people? How do you evoke that emotion and so on that we're talking about when you're connecting with people through your personal brand? So it's not about self-promotion. It is about building a brand to show how you can add value to people. It is about you. It is about self-differentiation in the public eye or with your audience. It is not about how many people know you, but how they know you as well. So do what is comfortable to you, know what you want, know what your strengths are, and engage on these. And remember, you are unique and no one else can tell your story. And so be secure about your brand and what you have to offer, because it's very, very important that you make sure that you deliver a brand. Without personal branding, you will also find that you have a disadvantage compared to others, because you won't be making those connections that we spoke about. And if you're looking for a job, you might lose out on significant job opportunities because you won't be top of mind when recruiters are doing their search. Because in this day and age, I can tell you that most recruiters, if not all, are Googling, are searching for potential employees. So it's very, very important that if you're looking for a job, that you are making sure that you're delivering your personal brand. Because if not, it's also going to limit your reach in terms of who you connect with, and nobody's going to know who you are. So we have talked about the definition for branding and looked at professional brands and talked a little bit about personal branding and why it is important. So let us look now at how we build our unique brand, and specifically how you first discover and develop your personal brand. The first thing you'll need to know or to think about is what is the direction that you want to go in. Because you need to know where you're going. So as Seneca says, to the person who does not know where he wants to go, there's no favorable wind. So you first need to focus on where it is that you want to go with your personal brand. What is the direction you want to take in order for you to know how to go ahead in terms of delivering a personal brand. And some of the questions you're going to have to ask yourself, some soul searching questions. And I've indicated a few here on this slide and the next slide, but of course there are other questions that you probably would need to ask yourself. But you need to think about what do you want to be known for and what you might currently be known for. What are the past experiences that you have had that helped shape where you are today? What makes you different? Because we're all unique in our own way. We're all different. So there, you just think about what makes you different. How have you been successful in the past? What problems have you solved? And how have you demonstrated an impact? Think about your areas of expertise. And one of the things I really emphasize, how can you add value? So anything that you're putting out there to your audience, how can you add value to the persons who you want to listen to you or you want to deliver your brand to? So these are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. So really give them some thought. And because the answers to these questions will determine your branding strategy and your approach. And of course, when you think about the answers to these questions, it will give you more insights about yourself, and you'll be able to determine what your goals are, what you're passionate about, what you want to be known for, etc. So you will know that your personal brand is effective if you are achieving your goals. Another thing that is not just to ask yourself some questions, but also to ask other persons to give you feedback. Get some insight from other persons. This is very, very important. But you have to be open to hear what other persons tell you, to listen to it. And of course, ask persons who you feel would give you honest feedback, not to hurt you or to be, whatever, but giving you constructive, I call it constructive feedback, right? So get some reviews, listen to how people describe you. What are the compliments that people talk about when they say things about you? Because like, for example, I used to take the fact that I'm very organized as something that was just mundane, that was just ordinary. But everywhere I would go, my staff or my team members would talk about my organization skills, my communication skills, because so I realized that these are things that I should tap into, because obviously it's something that is being noticed. And I think the reason why I decided that I love to do sales training so much is because I use my organization skills and I use my communication skills when I'm doing training. So you need to think about what it is that people say about you. You also need to hear some of the negative things as well. And as I said, make sure it's constructive feedback and think about how you can work on those things. I've had to do that over the years as well, because none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, and we all should listen to the constructive feedback from other persons. So think about what is it that they're saying, what makes people stop, watch, and say, wow, when they hear about you. And in terms of just another quotation here from John Maxwell, Dr. John C. Maxwell, he says, you need to gauge not only where you have been, but where you are now. Otherwise, you cannot set a course for where you want to go. And this is from his book, 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, Law of Awareness. So, I mean, over the years, I guess because of my age and in terms of my experience over the years, I've gotten to be aware of where it is exactly I want to go, what it is that I want to project out there as my personal brand. So these are things that develop over time. So you may recall that I had stated earlier on that what you do, who you do it for, how you are unique, and where you do it, that's you, the brand. So having determined where it is that you want to go with your brand, asking yourself those questions, gotten the feedback from everybody, then you need to look at the who, the what, and the why. So let's talk about that more in detail. So the who, of course, is your target audience. Who should know about you? So you need to determine who it is that you want to put information out there, who you want to communicate with, who you want to deliver your personal brand to. So you need to know your audience. As we mentioned before, if you're a job seeker, then your audience will be your potential employers, persons who might be able to put you onto employers. If you are an entrepreneur, you need to determine where your customers are, etc. Right? So you need to really look at who are your target audience and then where you find them. And of course, what it is that you do. So if you're young and just getting started, think about what your natural talents are, what your skills are, what your passions are. Because I'm sure you would have heard it said that if you focus on doing stuff that is you love to do, it is not work. So when you love to do what it is that you do every day as your income earner, it will be something that you enjoy to do, something you'll get when you jump up in the morning, you want to get up and go and do it. I can tell you that if it is that you're stuck in a job where you're not enjoying, it's going to become very stressful and it will take its toll on you. So really try and think about if it's something that you're just starting out with, what are your talents, what are your skills, what you're passionate about, and see if it's something that you can make a career of. Sometimes it'll take a little while. It took me a little while to discover what I was passionate about. But certainly I'm happy now at this stage of my life that I'm only doing things that I am passionate and that I love to do. So really think long and hard. And if you ask yourself those soul searching questions that we spoke about before, it will really help you to determine what it is that you really want to do when in terms of a career going forward. And think about, when you think about what it is that you want to do, think about what your strengths are. Find 5 personal brand attributes or strengths, personally and professional, right? So you need to know what those strengths are and what makes you different. So get to know exactly what makes you great and ensure that you communicate it. And I've just referred this book to you. If it's something that you're trying to determine, work out what your strengths are, what it is that you really want to do, then this is a good reference book, Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham and Donald Clifton. So we have talked about the who, the what, the why. Why is in terms of you need to understand your unique value proposition and build a brand that reinforces your qualifications and expertise. So when you're thinking about the why, answer the questions. Why are you the go-to person for your area of expertise? How are you unique, right? And remember, I spoke to you about my expertise in terms of organization skills, communication skills, and using those roles to put in place what I love to do now, which is training. So really, really think about what it is that makes you unique and why are you the go-to person for that area of expertise. And as I said, it took me a while to realize that my organization skills were something that was probably one of my greatest strengths. But I realized that over the years, especially at the 3 financial institutions I worked for in the 30 years, I was always the go-to person to roll out a new product, set up a new department, because it entailed you being organized and putting things in place. So really think about what it is that you're expert at. So for example, I am not necessarily a big time writer, so I wouldn't necessarily write a book, so you really need to think about what it is that you are an expert at, right? Now, I have an exercise for you. Normally, if we were in a face-to-face session, I would ask you to think about what your value proposition is, but I want giving you a little homework, so to speak. So we have been talking about the who, the what, and the why, right? So you should have been thinking about who your audience is, what are your strengths, and why it is that you want to deliver your personal brand. So I want you to use all of these things that we've been talking about and think about what is your unique value proposition. So for example, what I have here says, I use my natural talents of blank and blank skills to have an impact in the blank industry. And I've given a few examples here, but think about what it is that you would use as your value proposition, what it is that you want to put out there as your brand to your audience. And I would encourage you really to really think about what is your value proposition, what it is that you bring to the table. So for example, if I were to use this format here and talk about myself, I would say something like, I'm passionate about using my natural talents of organization and communication skills to provide training to leaders and individuals and have an impact in their growth in the areas of communication, leadership, and sales, something along those lines, right? So really, really think about what are your natural talents and skills, who your audience are, and think about what is your value proposition. So I hope you'll all agree to take that as your homework. All right, I'm being a teacher now in school, right? And of course, the same kind of information is what you would use if you are thinking about creating your resume, because you should come up with a short profile or bio for your target audience in your resume if you're looking for a job. This same bio should be on your LinkedIn profile, and I hope we all have a LinkedIn profile. We'll talk a little bit about that. So think about who will read your bio, what you would want your audience to know, what must they know. So if it's your resume for job seekers, I really want to know about your professional experience, your skills, your personality, for example. And think about what is in it for your audience. How do you help your target audience? Again, coming back to the same thing of adding value to your target audience. And remember, as I said, it's not about self-promotion. Yes, you want to speak about your strengths, but you also need to show how you add value to your audience. All right, so we spoke about the who, the what, the why. So let us talk about the where. So we know our value proposition and we have our resume with our bio. So we need to talk about how we're going to communicate our personal brand, which is the where in your brand. The first thing you'll need to do is to create a clear communication plan. Think about how you will manage your brand on a daily basis, right? So you need to try and create a lane for yourself. Try to make sure it doesn't replicate as much as possible what is already out there in the digital universe, and make sure it is information that is of value to your chosen audience. As mentioned, we want you to use your unique personal stories as an anchor in creating your brand, right? And some of you might say, boy, I don't really have a personal story, but think about things that have happened to you in life that have transformed you into who you are today. What is it that you believe in? How did you get started? What are you passionate about? Who are you passionate about helping? What gets you excited and gets you up in the morning? So we do have personal stories, and all personal stories are all unique to us, right? Nobody else can be us. We're all different. So we need to just make sure that we differentiate ourselves out there in the marketplace and tell our personal stories. And just as how when we're talking about the company brands, the professional brands, and we were talking about the elements that make them great, you know, evoking emotions, connecting with people and so on. And as I said, adding value. But just think about, how do you create a lane for yourself? How do you differentiate yourself? And how do you connect with the people that you want to connect to in your audience? And in doing so, it is very important that you choose the right tools and the right channels. So you need to select a combination of vehicles that reach your target audience and that play to your strengths, right? And make sure that you are engaging online. That's one tangible way to communicate your brand, is engaging online. I'm sure most of you are young folks and you know that online is the way to go. And even though I might be an older fogey, I do recognize the importance of engaging online, especially for my professional brand, even more so, not just personal. So you can do things like websites. I have a website for my sales business. I have a website for the John Maxwell Speaker Training Coach business, blogs, podcasts, social networks, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook are the more common ones, but I know there are lots of others around. So again, looking at the type of audience that you want, because I'm sure you know that if you want to attract millennials, you need to be on Instagram. Twitter has a lot of what they call the Generation X, and I understand that they're mostly male. And Facebook, of course, would be the Generation X and the older, what you call them again, baby boomers, I think is what you call them. So the older folks are on Facebook primarily. So depending on where you want to find your audience, those are the decisions that you make in terms of which network you would want to make sure that you are choosing. And very important, LinkedIn, right? I'm sure you would all agree. Does everybody recognize that as a job seeker, the online site that is the most important one for professional networking is LinkedIn? So I would recommend that if you are also trying to connect professionally, that you make sure that you have a LinkedIn profile. Your profile should have some of the contents that you would put for your resume. So think about, again, where you engage online, and make sure that you're sharing online, not just posting information about yourself, but also engaging with others, sharing other posts and liking other posts, etc., and connecting with people online. So remember, you do not need to be on every online platform. As I said, think about where your target audience is, play to your strengths, and do what is comfortable to you. For example, if you're not a good writer, you certainly should not blog, right? So just think about, don't decide you're going to be on every single platform because you're going to wear yourself thin. Think about which ones are the best ones for you, depending on your target audience. All right, and of course, you can also engage offline. And these include events like networking. Show up and engage and connect with others just as you would online. Very important. Physical appearance plays a great part in how you communicate your brand when you are connecting, networking with persons. How you work the room, connect with people, just the way in which, as I said, you connect online, you also connect with them when you're networking. I know we don't have a lot of networking events now, face-to-face, because of what's happening with COVID, but there will come a time when you will start networking again. And you introduce yourself using your value proposition, which is basically what your elevator pitch is all about, shaking hands, building rapport, etc. Right? So making sure that you are also communicating your brand offline. Other offline ways to connect would include, of course, job interviews. And the same things that we just mentioned for networking would apply here. Your physical appearance, connecting with the persons who are interviewing you, shaking hands, building rapport, outlining your value proposition, etc. And I put these two different outfits here because I hope that you would agree with me that option B is usually, notice I use the word, which is more appropriate for interviewing or networking, because it depends, of course, on the type of event that you might be going to. If it is that you're going to be interviewing with a company that has a more casual and laid back attire, I would still not recommend that you go in flip-flops and shorts, but certainly you wouldn't need to wear a jacket or a tie, but certainly make sure that you're properly attired and fit into the culture of the organization. And the more appropriate one would be to just make sure that you have a nice shirt and a nice pants, and make sure that you look professional if you're going for a job interview, right? It's always better to dress up than to dress down. And of course, other ways to engage offline is with your resume. So I would strongly recommend that we look at how you prepare your resume with your accomplishments and your achievements. And of course, if you have business cards, the same things apply. Now, in addition to the tangible ways in which you can communicate your brand, there are also some intangible ways that you can communicate your brand. And I want to strongly recommend that you be very careful about how you use your email address, how you prepare an email address, because when you're young, sometimes you might choose to have a very provocative email address, but when you start to go out in there and start to do job interviews, you might find that those email addresses might not be appropriate. So appearance also is important overall to your brand. We spoke about that a while ago with the job interview and networking, so in general. But also what is important is your personality, because this is just as important as tangible method, what we spoke about in terms of the tangible ways of communicating your brand. So be mindful of how you come across to persons. Your values are very important. And I want to reinforce how important it is that you ensure that you treat everyone with the same respect, regardless of their status in life. Your values also include things like integrity and so on. So remember, people will always remember you in terms of how you come across, in terms of your appearance, in terms of your personality, in terms of your values, etc. So all of these intangible things are just as important as the tangible ones that we spoke about before. We're branding yourself online, networking, in the interview, and so on. So just be very careful of both. Be mindful of both the intangibles and the tangibles, because all of them will affect how people will perceive you. Sometimes people will get the wrong impression about us in terms of our personalities, but over time, once they get to know you, they realize what you are like. So take a look at these, think about it. How are you delivering your personal brand online? How are you delivering your personal brand in terms of the intangibles that we spoke about? And think about whether or not this is how you would really want to be perceived, right? And I hope that you all Google yourself from time to time to see how persons are seeing you. So if you're online, Google yourself and see what comes up, or ask somebody to Google you and ask them to give feedback on what it is that they see. Remember, the tangibles and the intangibles are how people perceive us, and that equals our brand. And of course, just some general rules: be diligent, assess your brand regularly, and ensure that you're portraying what you want as your personal brand. Be relevant, review feedback and evolve to stay relevant, and be consistent. You don't want to post something today and you don't post until another month, right? Remember, clarity and consistency equal transparency, and try to be interesting as much as you possibly can. Be genuine. You can't be fake, right? You can't maintain it if you're going to try and be fake. Very important. Be yourself. Be credible. And as we spoke about values before, demonstrating trust and integrity. Image is not everything, but it certainly is the first perception that persons get. And remember, what you do matters, how you do it is important, and why you do it is critical. So do it good and the credits will follow. So do what you want to be famous for, because you're famous for what you do, as quoted by Christian Anderson. And don't forget to make yourself findable, cultivate relationships, start and join conversations. And I want to focus a little bit on the donate your expertise to a cause. Tamoy mentioned that I'm a Kiwanian for the last 30 years. And I mean, guys, regardless of our status in life, there's always going to be somebody worse off than us. So whichever way we can find to give back and pay it forward, that says a lot for your personal brand as well. So when persons see your generosity of spirit, when they see you out there trying to help the less fortunate, that goes a far way in how you're perceived in terms of your personal brand. So that is something that you can think about as well. And this graph just shows the relationship between both developing your brand, your personal brand, and communicating your brand effectively. Both need to be done. So you need to think about where you're going, how you want to develop your brand, the who, the what, the why, and think about where you're going to be communicating and maintaining your brand. So both need to be done in order to establish your unique personal brand. Now, I want to just share a very short video with you. It's going to be about 3 minutes long. But in order for me to share, I have to stop sharing this PowerPoint. So I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint for a little bit. And I'm going to bring up the video. All right, let's hope I can find it very quickly. Not seeing it here. I brought it up before, not seeing it here at all. Are there any questions while I'm looking for the video? No questions? I'm not seeing the, all right. I'm not seeing the video. So what I'm going to do, all right, so I'm going to just play the video in the presentation. You will hear it, but you might not see all of it, right?
Personal branding is very important. Companies and businesses spend millions on ensuring that their branding is accurate to how they want to represent themselves. Making sure that the image is right, the message is clear, and it's appealing to the right audience. Now replace this idea, and instead of the business's brand, what about your personal brand? How much time do you spend on your personal branding? Do you even know what your personal branding is? You've got one even though you've never thought about it, and it might be doing you more harm than good. Personal branding allows you to look at yourself from different perspectives. From your perspective, you may think that you have everything you need to get into the job market. However, if you change that perspective, no one will even know you're there. It is important that the right people can see the right thing about you. Let's look at all the things that a business uses to improve their personal brand. Let's say we have a business that produces a product. To improve our brand, we need to look at a few things. One of them being the product features. What is unique about this product that sets it apart from everything else? What is the appeal of our product? Next, we look at the target audience. Who will be buying this product and why? What age range and demographic? Now, what we have to do is emphasize on the product features that will appeal to the target audience. We could do this in a lot of ways. For example, by picking the right logo, by making press releases, and advertising campaigns. Once we've done this, we know the right product features is appealing to the right demographic. This then draws attraction to our product, we get lots of sales, and we live on a nice beach house somewhere. Let's go back. Let's take all of this and imagine that product is you. Now we have a look at your product features. What makes you unique? What specific skills, experiences, and specialisms do you have? What are your personal qualities, your interests? All of these are features that make you unique and special. Your target audience will be people in your career area that potentially could employ you. It's also anyone that could help you get in contact with potential employers. Now, like every business, we need to link your product features to your target audience. What key features are you going to emphasize? What are your marketing outputs? Outputs such as your CV, your Facebook profile, what you wear, your body language, what you say and how you say it all communicate your personal brand. You can control your brand, and it's important to get it right. Many people are competing for the same job as you, but when you get it right, you might not get that beach house we talked about, but it will land you a job.
All right. Okay. Is everybody still seeing my screen? All right, are you still seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so we have talked about the who, the what, the why, and the where. So just very briefly, before we end, I would like to look at what employers look for in your personal brand.
Mommy.
So we mentioned before that employers are looking online to check you out before they meet with you. And there are studies that show that most employers, at least 75% of them, are in fact Googling you, looking at your online profile to see what you're all about. So as I said before, be very careful that you know or Google yourself to make sure that you know what it is that potential employers are seeing. So let us look very quickly at what they're looking for in your personal brand. So your online profile, as we just spoke about, of course, your resume. So you need to make sure, as I said to you before, that you have an excellent resume done up, talking about who you are, your credentials, your experience, your reputation, your credentials, your skills and achievements, your interests, and your personal details. Now, how you interview for jobs is also very, very important, because personal branding is how recruitment is done. And just to speak on that for a minute or two, we won't go into any great length, but make sure that before you do an interview, and I should mention, by the way, that throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to interview, I would say, at least nearly close to 100 persons between the 3 financial institutions I've worked for. And it's amazing sometimes what you see when persons come for an interview. So one of the things I would encourage you to do is to make sure that you research the company, learning as much as you can about the company so that you can ask some very, pertinent questions when you get there, right? So research the company on their website. A lot of information is available online. read news coverage about the company, seek out their social media feeds, etc., and brush up on, information on them so that you know something about the company when you go there. The second thing, of course, we have spoken about it twice as it relates to networking and also for job interviews, is to dress appropriately. So plan, as I said, an outfit that fits the culture of the organization. And as I said before, it's always best to overdress than to underdress. Arrive on time. Matter of fact, try to be at least 15 minutes before the interview. And of course, mind your manners, make sure you politely greet the interviewers. Anybody you come across within the organization, make sure you greet them, be polite. And this is a pet peeve of mine, pay attention to your body language. I had an interview once where somebody had a pen in their hand and they were clicking the top of the pen the entire 45 minutes to an hour that they were in the interview. So you can imagine how distracting that was. I had another interview where somebody actually asked me if it was okay for them to answer their phone that was ringing. So, these are things that we need to be very careful about. Turn off the phone, be mindful of the body language, make sure that we are giving eye contact, smiling, and just sitting up, in terms of a solid posture, etc. And ask insightful questions. So if you have done your research, you'll be able to ask some very pertinent questions, as I mentioned before. And generally speaking, just overall in terms of interviews, remember that your personal brand, including how you communicate your value proposition and how you differentiate yourself, is also very important in order for you to get the job. Right? So I'll just pass. So in summary, let us look at, no, I don't know why we went back. All right, so in summary, brands are born of experience and reflect trust. It's a measure of reputation and perception in the eyes of the consumer. So as I said to you before, how people perceive us is what our personal brand is. How we perceive companies, that's what their professional brand is. So we need to be mindful of how we are perceived in terms of the audience that we want to appeal to. Personal branding is a process by which you differentiate yourself by identifying and articulating your unique value proposition and then leveraging it across platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, LinkedIn, preferably if you're looking for a job, with a consistent message and image to achieve specific goals. And as we said before, what you do, right, your skills, etc., who you do it for, how you are unique, and where you do it equals you, the brand. So how you develop, communicate, and maintain your personal brand will help you in your job search, will help you in your current job, will help you to find new opportunities, networking or making connections, and becoming more personally fulfilled with life, generally speaking. So regardless of age, regardless of position, because I said I started late in life in terms of delivering my personal brand, regardless of your age, regardless of your position, regardless of the business that you are in, all of us need to understand the importance of branding. We are CEOs of our own companies, me incorporated.
I can learn to understand you much better if I can get familiar with the way you talk. I need your permission to help.
Your most important job is to be head marketer for the brand called you. So that was said by Tom Peters, who is a management guru. So remember, personal brand is all about taking control of who you are and the image you project out into the world, right? And we need to be very careful that, as I said, what persons are Googling about us is what we want to project. Remember, in ending, your smile is your logo, your personality is your business card, how you leave others feeling after an experience with you becomes your trademark. And of course, how your audience perceives you is your personal brand. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you found it very informative. And this is my contact information if anybody would like to get in touch with me. But I don't know if there are any questions or any comments. Over to you, Tamoy.
In the chat.
Thank you so much. Yes, there were some questions in the chat. I noted a couple of them, like from Nadine. She said, how do you work or network a virtual room?
Oh, well, one of the things that We are all very familiar now. We're using Zoom now, right? So there are different ways in which you can network in Zoom, because there are different, what they call them, rooms that you can break out into. They can actually connect with people. So I have never attended a networking event on Zoom, but because I know how Zoom works, it can be done if you wanted to network, because you can break out into little groups and have a discussion amongst yourself and then move on to another group as you go along. So that can be done virtually. I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you, please, Mrs. Tomlinson, if you could go back to your contact information slide. I think it missed some of us.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I don't know why the mouse is not working. All right, let's go back. Trying to go back. 1 second. The arrow not going back. All right, well, I'll figure it out in a little bit. Any other questions while I try to? Don't know why it's not going.
Farah Ahmed, I see that your hand is up. Do you have a question?
There we go. Let me look in the chat then. I see somebody, Keon, in this age, would you say that the best way to sell your brand is to produce a website, or is that for certain jobs and themes and career paths? I guess everything depends on your audience. Depending on what it is that you're trying to do. So for example, I am appealing when I first started out, I started doing sales training before I became a John Maxwell speaker training coach. So I created a website, yes, because I wanted to appeal to organizations and individuals. So I would say the answer to that depends upon the audience that you want to appeal to. If it's something that appeals to millennials, I'm not sure how many millennials really go to websites. You probably can answer that question. So you might not need to do a website. Certainly, I think as I said, think about who your audience is and who you want to attract before you decide if you want to do a website, if you want to do a podcast, Facebook Live, or any of those things. It just depends on who your audience is. But I do have a website because I want to attract companies as well as individuals.
All right, Miss Sam, can I continue with along that line of questioning? Right. I'm asking that question because I'm wondering if there's a I know you answered it, right? But if you have to go, let's say, for a standard format, would you just go for the classic? Let's say, for example, you know the different types of resumes, not really different types, different structures of resumes, and it's based on the audience, as you said. But I'm thinking, is it always safe to just stick to a standard, or do you always have to craft it to your audience? So almost like, you know, crafting it for an interview. I know you have some persons that they'll change their aims on their resumes just to suit the company that they want to interview. I want to know what's your recommendation on that. Do I change the way I look or the way I feel, the way I think because I just want a job, or should I just portray me and say best of luck with it?
No, I think there are you said two things there that hit me. If you should portray you or also to your audience, because you need to determine though which industry or which area, what is your expertise. So for example, I don't expect you to be applying to an audience that will be creative versus an audience that is more stiff, like say a bank. So because your resume would have to be different for a company that deals with creatives versus a company that is like a bank, which is very conservative. But the question is, do you want to work in both areas? Because what I think the key thing is to focus is on what are your interests like? And then at the end of the day, if your interest is something creative, then you would be applying to a company who deals with creatives. So your resume would be geared in such a way so that they can see the creativity in you. You see the point I'm making? I don't expect that you will be applying to totally two different entities that are so opposite of each other.
No, I'm actually wondering if I'm torn because I'm trying to be an instructional designer, and you know the straight jacket there is education, but the designer there is the creative side. So that's why I guess I was trying to hide the question a little bit.
Okay.
Where do you stand? Do you be creative? Do you be classic? Or do you try to mix it too? Is it legal to even mix it too when you're branding yourself?
No, but it's not illegal. It should be about you. Is it Kian? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes,
Make
my
it up.
mother says Kian. It's pronounced Kian.
Make it about you, because what the audience should be seeing, and when they're reading your resume, they should figure out who is Kian. Who is Kian? They need to figure out who you are when they're reading that resume. So I would say if you're gonna be targeting different audiences, I would say make it about you, because the company that chooses you would be a better fit for you because they liked your creativity. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, because another thing I should point out, don't stay somewhere where you can't be yourself. So I would say that, yeah, I'm serious, because that happened to me too. If you're stuck somewhere where you cannot be you, then it's time for you to go. I know sometimes we stay because of economic reasons, but my recommendation to you would to be you, because the company that you want to attract would be a company that would want somebody like you. Does that answer your question? Right.
Because, yes, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I would say be you. Right. I see a number of questions here. Let me see, where do I go first? If you have a great logo, a great personality business card, and you leave others with good experiences, and your trademark helps others, but you're given the job to train, motivate, etc., but those persons are promoted and you are left there to just make everyone look good, how do you deal with that? As I believe it can get demotivating after a while. I guess it comes back to what I just said a while ago. If you are feeling demotivated, I would recommend, first of all, that you have a discussion with whoever it is that you work for. But if you're not seeing any progress, remember, you need to be somewhere where you feel appreciated. So unless it is that you're staying for economic reasons, then I would recommend. But as I said, before you do anything, I would recommend having a discussion with whoever it is that you report to. Hopefully somebody that you can have a serious conversation with, where you can express your concerns and see, because maybe sometimes they don't even know what your concern is. So before you do anything, I would recommend that you have that conversation with whoever reports to you. Sometimes when people are good enough, because based upon what you're saying, you are training other persons. So because you're doing such a good job, they're keeping you to continue to train everybody else. So you need to express that you are feeling demotivating and see if you can get any results out of that. But if you don't, then again, as I said, we need to be somewhere. I wouldn't say, notice somebody says leave. I wouldn't leave right away. I would have that conversation first. And when you have that conversation, don't go there with a negative view. Have the conversation to just express your concern, how you're feeling, how it makes you feel. You recognize, yes, that because you're good at what you do, that they need you to assist with that, but you really would like to be recognized for your efforts as well. So have that conversation first before, as the other person said, before leaving. The conversation was had, but no recognition. But the challenge is that the job is something the person likes and wanted to do all their life. Oh, so this is something that you want to do. I'm not sure if I'm getting it clear, but if it's something that you love to do, I would say recommend that you still have that another type of conversation, or if not, leave as the other persons are saying to you. Shanice says, don't stay where you're tolerated but celebrated. I totally agree. Because as I said, there was an instance where I left somewhere because, not so much because I wasn't celebrated, but because the atmosphere was a bit toxic and it was very stressful. So I personally would not recommend that anybody stay where they are not appreciated, but I wouldn't recommend that you just get up and leave, because sometimes you might jump from the frying pan into the fire, which is why I strongly recommend that you also try to get a solution before you leave. That comes from maturity, by the way, because sometimes you might jump from the fire into the frying pan. Would you say that it's actually harmful to your brand or future prospects for advancement if you do not maintain a very active online presence? Harmful is not necessarily the right word that I would use, but as I said, I found out the hard way when I left my first long-term job, I realized that even though I knew that I was good at what I did, nobody knew that I was good. So I would certainly say that delivering your personal brand, maintaining an active online presence is necessary, not just to get another job, but even in terms of your current job, to also maintain connections, to build connections, because it can help in other ways. So I wouldn't say the word harmful, but I certainly would strongly recommend that you maintain a personal brand online. Not saying that you have to be on every single platform. You can choose one or two, but I would recommend that you keep an online presence, because I found out the hard way, because I wasn't on any personal social media. I was doing it for Kiwanis, so I knew how to use social media because I was PR for my club and my division and my district at one point. So I knew the importance of social media, but I didn't think it was necessary for myself personally, and I learned the hard way. So I would say it is important for you to maintain a presence. But as I said, be selective in the platforms that you use. You don't have to be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of them. Just choose one or two. Do you tweak your resume to match the job to which you're applying? I think that's also what Kian was just saying a while ago. And as I said, be you, and make sure that the jobs that you're applying for are relating to what it is that you want to do. And as it pertains to your LinkedIn profile, how much information should be included, and one if it should include or look similar to your resume. Yes, my current profile includes a description of what I do currently. Yes, I think your LinkedIn bio, the introduction that you have at the very front of the LinkedIn, should resemble your resume to some degree. You should really talk about how you help people or how you can add value to people. So your LinkedIn profile, as I mentioned earlier on, and your resume should look very similar. They both are are professional. You know, your resume is a document, your LinkedIn is an online site, but they are both professional and they should be correlating with each other. Matter of fact, your LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to add more information than what is on your resume, because your resume should only be maybe 2 pages or 3 pages maximum. Whereas on LinkedIn, you can actually attach documents about things that you do. You can attach certificates, so your LinkedIn should be an extension of your resume. My LinkedIn, for example, I have posted information about my sales training. I've posted my John Maxwell certificate that I got when I was certified to be a speaker training coach, things like that. So I would strongly recommend that, yes, your LinkedIn should tie to your resume, but it should actually have more than what is on your resume. Somebody sent me something privately. Old school, old culture, values, morals, social etiquette. How much stress or of soft skills should one request for the millennial star performer? I'm not sure I understand the question. Hold on. The questions are going very fast and furious.
There was one question about how is it that you find your strength. It was, I think that was Chanel. She was asking what's the best way for you to identify your strengths.
All right, so there was a book that I referred you to in the presentation, and I can share the presentation with you because it helps you to identify your strengths. But basically, as I said to you before, what are the things that you find that you love to do and you do it well? And as I said, ask persons for feedback, because I used to think that my organization skills, my son and my ex-husband used to tease me because I'm so organized, because I even organize my personal life, not just my work life. So I used to get teased about it, oh, you're so organized, you're so organized. But then it became a big asset at work, and persons will keep on talking about my organization. So ask people for feedback, what it is that you do well. What do persons perceive as your strength? When I was branch manager, and we had the employee survey, they gave me 100% for communication. So I recognize that persons look on and say, okay, you're good at communicating to your team. So I realized that those were my 2 biggest strengths, communication and organization. So when I was trained, as I mentioned to you before about being a sales trainer, I realized, oh boy, I love to do this. This is me. So that's why I ended up, when I retired, started to do sales training. And then I ended up working with another company on contract for 4 years, training and doing sales support, and then doing the John Maxwell's certification to become even more of a trainer where I can train in other areas as well. So you can easily find out, think about it, what it is that you like to do, what it is that you do well, and get feedback from other persons. But you can also do the research, as I said, use the book that I mentioned and to identify your strengths. Yeah, I'm sure if you ask persons for feedback though, they will tell you. And even at work, for example, because I'm so organized, people used to come to me with their own presentations, asking me to look at it to see if, there's any feedback I could give them. So people will tell you. And they will also tell you the negative things that you need to work on as well. I've been told one or two things that I need to work on as well. Like, for example, I know I'm very impatient. So, over the years, sometimes I would end up doing things myself because I can't wait on somebody else to do it. So I have to learn to delegate and to be more, that kind of a way. So I know what my faults are because people have told me that over the years as well. Any other, Tama, come on, I don't know if you have seen any other questions because they're all fast.
Yes, I saw one from Kelvin. He's asking, are business cards a requirement given the current technological revolution, particularly if your audience are persons of Generation X?
Well, in this time during COVID, I wouldn't say that business cards are necessary, but once you're doing anything face-to-face, I would say yes. So if you are networking, for example, you hand out your business cards at those events. If you're dealing with customers, you're handing out your business cards. So I would definitely say yes. But again, depending on what industry you're in, you can make your business card be creative, be personal to you. It doesn't have to be a stiff looking business card. So I would say the answer to that is yes. But certainly, like for example, this is a business card that the John Maxwell team gave to me. This is their generic business card. I haven't gone out and printed any because I got this during COVID. So I haven't gone through the expense of printing a business card because I'm not going anywhere to hand out the business card because I'm doing everything virtual. So you can have a soft copy for instances where you are doing things virtually, or as you said, with millennials. But I would say yes to having the business card if you're going to be doing things face-to-face, if you're going to go in for interviews face-to-face, if you're going to go for networking events. And COVID must pass at some point in time, so it will be necessary when we start doing things face-to-face again. But it is an excellent tool to hand out a business card, and it can be a creative tool as well. When somebody looks at your card, they should be impressed with what is on the card.
There was one more from Paul Julian. What is the best approach for marketing a music group now during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sorry, repeat that.
What is the best approach for marketing a music group now during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Marketing a music group, oh boy. Well, I have actually seen a lot of things being done virtually. I mean, I'm an older generation, but certainly things like Versus, I've watched the Versus. I can tell you, I was thoroughly enjoyed the Versus with Beanie Man and Bounty Killer, right? So there are ways in which you can get very creative during this virtual time in terms of what you do. I've seen people where they have these virtual parties. And I know even in Kiwanis, I saw where Kiwanis Club had a virtual party and they asked persons to pay because they had because you have to raise things for fundraising in Kiwanis. So there are different ways in which you can be creative in this virtual time. As I mentioned, like Versus is a good example of some. Use Facebook Live, use all of those things where you can actually have the audience engaging in the chat and giving feedback so you can actually have persons interacting on the chat. So I say there is still scope for it. You just have to be very creative. Look at me as a trainer. I was doing everything face-to-face before March. Now I have to learn how to train virtually. So that is another novel thing for me to do. So whatever line of business we are in, we just have to now conform with what is happening now and see how we can do it virtually. So I would say, yes, there's an opportunity there. Because especially with music, persons want to be entertained, they want to relieve themselves of the stress of COVID. So I think there's an opportunity or there's a market there to do that as well. Somebody's asking about the name of the book. Let me look through my notes without going back into the presentation and find it. The name of the book is Now Discover Your Strengths, or let me see if I can type it into the chat. Go ahead with another question for in the meantime. Come on. And
Okay, so
while I type in the name of the book.
all right, I am an old school, old culture, values, morals, social etiquette person. How much stress on soft skills should one request from the millennial star performer for his personal brand? If he does the job well, must he have a brand of being sociable? I think you kind of alluded to this one a little earlier, but I saw it repeated.
I'll repeat it again because I'm writing.
Okay, so give me a minute, please. It's I am old school, old culture, values, morals, and social etiquette. How much stress of soft skills should one request from the millennial star performer for his personal brand? If he does the job well, must he have a brand of being sociable also?
Oh, okay. Yes, I did address that before because, as I said to you before, sometimes persons believe that is only needed if you're looking for a job or for certain age groups or whatever. I certainly would recommend, as I said, because I learned the hard way. As I mentioned, you don't have to be out there on every single platform, but you should try to engage persons in some way, whichever one is best for you. So just to put yourself out there in terms of maintaining a positive personal brand. So you never know when you might need persons to know who you are. So I would recommend it for everybody. And to be honest, I think most millennials are on social media anyway, but just be mindful of what it is that you're putting out on social media. I should also mention that because remember, in the future, if you're going to be employed, your potential employers are going to be looking on your social media page. So you need to be mindful of how you're projecting yourself on social media. And I know a lot of young persons are putting a lot of things out there, but I would, as I said, think about it. When you're posting something, is this something that you would want a potential employer or a customer to see about you? So think about that when you're posting as well. Any other question?
Yes, I see one more. Do you have to create a brand promise? That's what I saw.
Okay. When you say create a brand, because when we say personal brand, you're just differentiating yourself out there. You're just putting information out there. You're showing persons what you do. Now, if it is that you just want to be on social media, as I said, without thinking about how you're adding value or how you're going to be potentially impressing a potential employer, that's fine. You can put yourself out there, but mindful, as I just said a while ago, just be mindful of what you're posting. Because remember that when the time comes that you would need to attract a certain audience, whether it's for a job or a client or whatever, that they're going to look back at your social media page. So even if you're on social media, but you're not necessarily thinking about branding yourself in any way, just be mindful of what you're posting. And in a sense, you're branding yourself that way because you're making sure that whatever you're putting out there is something that is positive. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, because we're kind of pressed for time. I hope it's okay with you, Mrs. Tomlinson, if persons are able to email you their questions after the webinar, you could be able to respond to them. Is that fine?
That's wonderful. So kpetomlinson@gmail.com as indicated there.
Okay, everyone, with your questions, you can email Mrs. Tomlinson at kpetomlinson@gmail.com, considering we're a little pressed for time. And I know that we have pressing things that we really want to get out there. So with that being said, I want to thank you so much, Mrs. Tomlinson, for greeting us tonight. I want to thank you so much for, personally, I've been inspired, and I think a lot of our audience would also agree. I thank you also for being an amazing audience. You guys were very interactive. I thoroughly enjoyed being your moderator, and I think we all deserve some smiley faces. So can I have some smiley faces in the chats, please? I like it so much. Awesome. Alisa said she liked the session. I agree. Job well done. Yes, thank you guys so much, Mrs. Tomlinson, again. Thank you for taking the time out to come and really, take us out of our slum and let us understand the importance of our personal and professional branding. I also think many of our young persons in the audience benefited from the conversation, like myself. And with that being said, thank you so much, everyone, and good night.
All right. Good night, everybody. And thank you. I agree with Tamoy. Excellent audience. And I thank you for the feedback. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.
All right.